Hello and welcome to today's webinar. The topic is how to safeguard your data and fight ransomware. This event is brought to you in thanks to our partners at Cohesity and Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. We've got a great event lined up for you today. This is a hot topic and we're going to have a cool demo. But before we get started, there's just a few things that you should know about today's event. My name is David Davis of Actual Tech Media, and I'll be serving as the host and moderator. As always, we want these events to be educational, and we encourage your questions there in the questions pane of the audience console. We'll be doing a live Q&A at the end of the event. And then I also want to encourage you to check out the Handouts tab. It's there that you'll find 3 solution briefs and 1 ebook. You can click on the View button for all of these, and you can download them to your local computer and check them out after the event. At the end of the webinar, I'll be announcing the winner of our Amazon $250 gift card prize. If you're watching this on demand, of course, that drawing would have already occurred. And then today, we also have our special Best Question prize. This is for an additional Amazon $50 gift card. That means you must ask a question to be entered into the prize drawing and meet the Actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions, which you can find right there in the Handouts tab. All right, and with that, it's now my pleasure to introduce you to today's 2 expert presenters. Welcome to Chris Klosterman, HPE Alliance Field CTO at Cohesity, and Chris Tinker, GMS CTO and Distinguished Technologist at HPE. Chris, it's great to have you on the event. Take it away.
All right, so our topic for today is safeguarding your data and fighting ransomware. And, overall agenda real quickly here. We're going to talk about the partnership, give you a little bit of context in the market. We're going to talk about HPE's solutions with Cohesity, give you some customer proof points. What have our other customers seen out in the field? I'm going to do a demo for you because everybody hates death by PowerPoint. So let's make this a little bit more interesting. And by the way, make sure to send those questions in. As you saw, there will be a $50 prize for the best question. So don't be shy about that. And then, kind of the lead behind some questions that you should ask yourselves, what to think about in this context. Hopefully this is a little bit, helpful for everybody joining today. So let's talk about the partnership to begin with. So far, to date, we have over 600 joint customers all over the world between HPE and Cohesity, combined. HPE is an investor in Cohesity, right? HPE has an equity partnership and has invested in 3 rounds of our financing to date, and it's a full OEM relationship. We're actually part of HPE's secure supply chain. I'll talk about that a little bit later. So that relationship is good, but what's the problem we're trying to confront here? So if we look at most legacy data protection solutions, they're fragmented, right? You get some servers, you install an operating system on them, you install data protection software on them, you get something else to write your backups out to. If you're going to archive to the cloud, maybe you need another product to do that. And that kind of fragmented approach creates vulnerabilities, right? There's a lot of attack surfaces to go after, and globally, cybercrime was predicted to hit $10 trillion annually by 2025. There's a lot of data out there. I don't think anybody disagrees with that. And the global ransomware damage costs are expected to exceed $250 billion by 2031. I think that we can all probably agree that a lot of ransomware attacks simply go unreported, because if you don't have a regulatory obligation to disclose, you're probably not going to.
No, because it has an effect on trust. It has an effect on reputation. And where Klosterman and I work together on this, we look at the impacts here, guys. One of the impacts is the complexity of the landscape, complexity of the technology. So our partnership, as alluded on the prior slide, first off, we've been developing it for years. We are an investor. We are a technology innovator. We work together to create best-of-breed technologies, outcomes. And then if you take all of this, when you look at the complexities of these various workloads, the proof points we're about to talk to about, think about the Kubernetes workflows that are starting to show up, right? Kubernetes and protecting those. How do you do it? How do you manage it? How do you orchestrate it? How do you create governance around it? We're going to get to that.
Yep. All right. So if we look through here, right, the cyber insurance market is expected to reach $15 billion annually by 2025. 60% of organizations are embracing the concept of zero trust as a starting point for security. I think in the government space, especially, we're seeing that now, not 2025. We're seeing that right now. And 45% of global organizations will be impacted in some way by a ransomware attack or a supply chain attack in the next 2 years. And that's what the analysts tell us. So let's take a look at what we have seen historically. Like if I go back to my start in IT, 15, 20 years ago, it's been a while. What were we concerned with? We were concerned with viruses, right? Viruses were mischievous, but they didn't really have a financial component to them. It was just to cause damage because somebody felt like being a jerk. Okay, let's call it what it is. But as time has gone on, the attackers have have started to treat ransomware as a business model. And as perverse as that logic is, just follow me here for a second. So when we first started seeing ransomware attacks occur in the market, it was encrypt production data, demand a ransom, right? But if you had a reasonable data protection solution, you'd turn to your backup, right, and restore the data and then move on with life. You wouldn't pay the ransom. So the attackers then decided, well, how do I increase my rate of return? How do I increase the ROI of that in time spent attacking somebody? So they started attacking backups, right? That's where you're turning for your restore. So let's destroy the backups, then encrypt the production data. And then as time has gone on even further, they've started going one step further, which is to, let me get this, there we go, to actually steal data. They'll exfiltrate data, then they'll destroy your backups, then they'll encrypt that production data. You're left with no choice but to pay the ransom. But as I'll show you on the next slide, sometimes the ransom is just a tip of the iceberg, right? And honestly is a rounding error. So we're going to talk about a real customer. This is not one of Cohesity's accounts. It's not an HPE customer either, as far as I'm aware. But the Scripps Healthcare out in San Diego has been very open and honest in the press about what happened to them about 18 months ago now. And, I certainly appreciate that they did this. And what they shared is that attackers came in, they stole data from 147,000 patients. Okay. To date, as of about 12 months ago, they said that the impact financially to them was $106 million. But what's really compelling here is to break that number down a little bit, right? And this is what, when we stop talking about technology for a minute, we start talking about business. They lost $91.6 million in revenue. They had ransomware insurance. It paid out. But what did it pay out? It paid out $5.9 million. Okay? 5.9 million out of 106 is just a rounding error. Our own marketing team sometimes will use the tagline, refuse the ransom. And while great, refusing the ransom is a fabulous thing, the amount of time they were down is really what hurt them. And they didn't do anything wrong. I'm not saying that at all, right? The IT team detected unusual network activity. They brought in outside forensics experts and law enforcement. They took down systems for containment. One of our own sales engineers out in California, his mom was in one of their hospitals when this happened. Her release from the hospital was delayed for 3 days just because they couldn't get access to her labs. So these have real concrete implications to people's lives. And the teams worked around the clock to restore the systems. I'm sure there was nothing short of heroic efforts made to get everything back online. But you can't just bring systems back up. You have to clean them, right? You have to make sure that when you bring them back online, that they're not still infected. It took them, in the end, almost a month to restore systems and recover all of their data. So if you look beyond the cost of the recovery itself, right, the average cost of the recovery is right now over $1.85 million. The average disruption period of an attack is 3 weeks. So you should start to ask yourself, and we'll talk a little more about this later, what would it cost you as a business to be down for a day, right? How about a week? How about 3 weeks, right? 2/3 of victims suffered significant revenue loss. 1/4 of victims suffered some period of total business closure. And the other thing to keep in mind is that, if you have a retention strategy today of just 30 days or 14 days, it's just not enough. On average, attackers lurk inside your network over 200 days. So even if you're not going to do a restore to something that's 200 days old, right? If you want to be able to do forensics later and find out where did the attackers get in, where did this compromise come from, you need a long-term retention strategy. So if we look at it this way, right, data is simply too vulnerable to breaches, and the management of it all is too complex. There's 20 ransomware attacks every second. Sometimes, on average, it takes 270 days to identify and recover from a complete data breach. 48% of customers today say that they do store confidential data in the cloud. And if you don't think you're among them, how many of you use M365 or G Suite? You're storing confidential data in the cloud. How many of you use Salesforce, right? Or another in the cloud CRM system? You're storing confidential data in the cloud. So if we look at, and the other thing that we have on here is that 68% of business data is unleveraged. Nobody's doing anything with it. So what value can you gain out of your data? So what Cohesity and HPE together can help you do is protect your data, right? Detect when something has gone wrong and then recover from it. Can we stop ransomware attacks? No, that's not what we're talking about here, right? There are endpoint solutions, there's Zscaler, there are things like that that can help protect endpoint devices. What we're talking about is finding that something's going on as quick as possible, telling you about it, and then helping you get back from it. So if we move on here, right?
Well, I think that goes to our partnership, right? If I think about, to your point, if you think about the protect, detect, recover, the protect, detect, recover does require an element of being able to look for anomaly detection. Cohesity has that capability, right? But we also have that all the way down to the firmware, which is what you see there from silicon to cloud. So as the partnership grows, we have to be able to protect from infrastructure all the way up through the protected stack. So when you do protect your data with Cohesity, that the actual assets sitting in the Cohesity ecosystem, we understand how we can protect the full stack. Next slide.
Yep, absolutely. Perfect. So Cohesity is available in multiple locations, right? We jumped back and forth. That's fine. When we look at our partnership together, our solutions are sold as a single OEM SKU. So it's not a server with a certain amount of disks and a certain amount of NVMe and specific NICs and things like that. It is an OEM SKU. So you buy the whole thing on one purchase order. We have very, very specific validated solutions, right? So very, very specific configurations that are certified, and they're sold under those OEM SKUs. What actually matters, though, and I'm going to jump around here just a minute, is that when Cohesity is part of HPE's secure supply chain, so that means that quoting and procurement is done through a single PO. In the HPE factory, the latest firmware is loaded. All the BIOS settings are pre-configured on the box to match Cohesity's prereqs. HPE installs our software in the factory. Now, HPE's secure supply chain, if you don't know about it, means that everything that comes in, that enters into that supply chain, whether it's a NIC, an HBA, a hard drive, an NVMe drive, a motherboard, anything that enters into that supply chain, they know the entire provenance of it. Where did it come from? How did it ship? Who has touched it? Right? Total control over sourcing. For Cohesity to become part of that supply chain took the better part of 2 years. And we're very happy to be there now. But that means that we have to digitally sign our software. We have to checksum it in a particular way. We have to provide it to HPE in a secure way. And that means that when you order this solution, it arrives on your floor as an appliance. HPE PS will do the rack and stack, and then Cohesity PS will build the cluster based upon an agreed upon configuration. And I know I just jumped out of order here a little bit, but I think it seemed to make a little bit more sense.
Well, it does, actually. It does. And if you think about what Chris just talked about here, this slider here articulates that single pane of glass from the Cohesity standpoint, right? Backup. Let's make sure we protect our enterprise. Where is it protected? How is it protected? Is it air-gapped? Is it immutable, right? But it also comes down to what you're seeing right here. The Cohesity Data Cloud sits on top of something. There's got to be CPU, network storage that's sized to handle the throughput, the backup, the volume of data, the velocity of data, the variability of data. All right. And what is the scope and scale of that ecosystem? And we're going to be giving you a demo here in a little bit, talking about some of the world's largest financial institutions and what we do with these guys, what we do with Cohesity. And we're talking petabytes of data and the number of VMs backed up simultaneously that make your head spin. Thousands of VMs, petabytes of data. Being able to protect that kind of ecosystem, but we can also protect the small to medium enterprise, right? Same technology, same framework. And what is it running on? Well, it's running on HPE ecosystems, HPE hardware. Density optimized compute. You see it right there. We got what we call the Silicon Root of Trust. Silicon Root of Trust is our claim to fame on a base management controller that we own cradle to grave with respect to how we actually package it, put it into the platform. It goes to our ability to protect, detect, recover any kind of firmware penetration, any kind of manipulation at that level. If when we ship, to Klosterman's point, when we ship a technology stack, you go back to that one slide about we ship it from the factory. When it ships from the factory and someone were to crack the box, open up the lid, look at an HPA, just look at it wrong. I'm joking. But if you crack the box, we detect that. And when it lands at the site, you put the power cord to it, we know that somebody has cracked the seal on this box. And therefore, the box is locked. It does require people to engage and say, who did what? Where's the actual supply chain? We can actually map what was manipulated, what was changed, what was impacted, mitigating risk to the business. That allows us to work with Marsh, who is a insurance broker, and they rate technologies out there and for the insurance world, and that gives us two classifications in our cybersecurity trust. Cybersecurity, we have two technologies, one of which is Silicon Root of Trust that allows insurance vendors to actually insure these technologies. And of course, the secure supply chain. ILO is that base management controller I was just talking about, which is where your Silicon Root of Trust is in the BMC. And of course, the physical server, of course, the networks. We have to put all of this into that ecosystem. And we haven't even got into firewalls and stuff that we had to have on the other side of that. That's outside of Cohesity. Cohesity is not a firewall engine. Just like the physical server is not a backup apparatus, backup of software. Back to you, Klosterman.
Yeah, perfect. And then ultimately, what Cohesity provides is the ability to run this same solution anywhere you want, right? We can run it on the edge on robo appliances. We can run it as a VM at the edge. We can run it in the data centers, and we can also run it in public clouds. Those licenses are portable. You can consume it as a subscription through GreenLake Group, GreenLake Managed Services. You can consume it as self-managed, traditional CapEx style acquisition as well. When we talk about hardware, right, we have a lot of options available to us right now. I think my last count, I don't show them all on the slide here. I've got most. I think at last count, we have 23 certified configurations with HPE that are GA right now and orderable right now. These are spread across Gen 10 and Gen 10 Plus. We can go as dense as 385 terabyte or 384 terabytes per node in just 2U, to as small as 12 terabytes per node. So people sometimes ask me, well, what is the right size to start looking at Cohesity? Well, let me just take you through a little mind example here to begin, just for a second. If we look at a 12 terabyte node, right? Cohesity is a scale out platform. So you're going to use at least 3, probably 4 of them to build a cluster. Okay, so 4 12 terabyte nodes, that's 48 terabytes raw. We protect data with erasure coding, so you'll get 2/3 of that usable. That's 32 terabytes usable. And then beyond that, we suggest you license at least about half the cluster. So that's 15, 16 terabytes. If you find yourself in a realm anywhere from 10 to 15 terabytes, all the way up to 100 petabytes, we can cover you from end to end there. So that's a really wide gamut. And the other great thing is that you can start small and grow as big as you need. We have a really robust roadmap with HPE as well on the hardware side. So you'll see, exciting stuff coming soon. We've talked about the secure supply chain. And so modern defenses against threats, right? What's this really talking about? Well, what we're talking about here is that we need to reduce the attack surface. Meaning I don't want a server that's my media server, that's another one that's my master server, or another one that is a separate device that's target storage. I don't want all those separate components. And then I have to manage the firmware independent of the software, independent of the operating system. that is a really wide attack surface. It's really broad. There's a lot of things to keep track of and to patch. Immutable backups. When Cohesity takes a backup, that data is immutable. And by default in newer clusters, it's actually locked down with worm from the factory, right? You cannot delete it. So be careful setting infinite retention because you're never going to delete that data. But the backups are immutable. There's no way to destroy that data short of a big hammer or low-level formatting the drives. So it's immutable. We use machine learning based anomaly detection. So this question was actually asked in the Q&A, and I think I started to answer it there from David Vasquez, right? Does that work on a VM level or just at a file level? Well, we look for anomalies based upon a number of things. So we can look at, hey, we've been backing up the same VM for the last 6 months, and on average it changes 1 to 5% a day. And on a given, I don't know, what's today, Wednesday, it changed 20%. That's unusual. That's anomalous. We can look at it as a whole, but we can also look at the file level. Hey, all of a sudden 100,000 files were added, 100,000 files were deleted. That's weird, right? And we can notify you of that. And we're extending our security and our insights even further with our Data Hawk launch, which is GA now. It'll be available through HPE very, very soon as well. So definitely look at that if you're interested in data classification, threat identification, and so forth. We can tell you the health of your snapshots, and then we can also give you the ability to rapidly recover. And I'll show that to you live in a minute here. But of course, this wouldn't be an HPE conversation without pointing out the giant ship in the room, GreenLake.
Now, to Chris Klosterman's point here, guys, think of it as under GreenLake as an umbrella term. You can take everything you just heard and put it into a consumption model. Pay for what you use. That's simple. All right? That's GreenLake consumption. Pay as you go. Right? Simple. Over here on the right-hand side, it talks about what we're doing with GreenLake. That does get prioritization on our shipping and stuff. But at the end of the day, that's one aspect of GreenLake. The next, if I look at it, is looking at GreenLake as a function of an umbrella term of what else we do with GreenLake. And that's managed services. Now, I'm going to explain managed services because the managed services aspect, we look at how do we provide that ecosystem of protecting the enterprise. When GMS, I go back to what I am, I'm the chief technologist of all GreenLake managed services worldwide. I look at it and go, how do we provide a service, SLA, SLO, to our customers that provides them the ability to be a cloud administrator to simply back up there and protect their enterprise? What technologies do we use? Now, we actually have 8 backup technologies we can pick from. 8. But all of them, we're going to show you in the financial market and manufacturing market and pharmaceutical market, life sciences, we use Cohesity in every one of the verticals. Why? Because they provide us flexibility. You heard it. Chris Klosterman, 15 terabyte, 100 petabyte. Simple, right? I can go from small to large. I can wrap that into a consumption model and I can scale it simply. I can protect my enterprise. I can manage volume. I can detect files. You heard it. I can detect vulnerabilities. I can detect variability, deviation from a norm. Because from a managed service provider, we need to be able to detect when something has changed in the enterprise, alarm on it, and understand, do we need to actually make advice to do an advisory service? So we got to do some action here. Okay, so what about Zerto? People ask me all the time about, hey, Cohesity, Zerto, what's the difference? Zerto is essentially DR. It's not backup in one sense. Can you do backup with it? You could. But again, we as managed services, I have other obligations around governance, compliance, right? So I think about GMS. Where's my backup governance at? Where's my compliance? Where's my process? Where's my reports? Cohesity has all that. They provide that functionality so we can actually engage and leverage that and use it via API. But Zerto's, again, for DR, for like VMs. So if a customer wanted to actually DR a certain VM, I'm still going to use Cohesity to back it up. And I'm going to use Zerto to do a DR replication into a public cloud. Now I'm a hybrid cloud MSP providing a CSP experience. MSP, managed service provider, CSP, cloud service provider experience. Okay. Now I spoke to a lot of Chris Klosterman. You know what? What did I leave out?
The only thing that that I like to highlight is if you look at Zerto is a great solution for what it does, but you just got to keep there's a little nuance there, right? Which is if you have 1,000 VMs in your environment or 2,000, how many of them need sub millisecond continuous data protection?
Right.
Probably just production. You're not going to do that for QA or stage or dev or test or any of the other environments. And so really we view these from our side as a complementary offering, right? You don't need one or the other, you need both. And Zerto may be for a smaller subset of the environment, but just because you protect something with Zerto doesn't mean there's not a need to back that up properly with a proper data protection solution as well.
To customer's point, when we sit down and work with the account teams on these type of opportunities, we work with a categorization and classification of service. It comes back to a service outcome. What is the actual SLA, SLO around that type of backup retention? And once we categorize particular business services, tier 0, and that tier 0 requires 0 RPO and RTO. How do we achieve that? We achieve that with near 0 with Zerto. If we have to go to 0, we have other solutions. This is the slide that talks about our service offerings, RPOs and RTOs around backup recovery. But at the end of the day, managed for you. So take the Cohesity. Does your people have to get trained on it? The only thing that your people would have to be trained on is the ability to actually be a cloud admin. They're controlling it through API, through a GUI. They click the button, right-click backup, right-click restore. Right. So now it's about self-empowerment, self-enablement to protect the enterprise. I think that slide's covered there. So business-wise,
Yeah,
we need to look at RPOs and RTOs. So I thought, what? Why don't we throw this up less around the technology, more around if you're out there and you're in the business and you actually want to understand from a business aspect, what are you talking about, Chris? We're talking about backup protection as an RPO. So no longer is it a speed and feed conversation. It's where Clusterman and I sit down with our SAs and our ecosystem and go, okay, the customer has a business problem. That business problem requires these particular key attributes, right? RPO, recovery point, recovery time, classification of these services, categorization of services. We break it all down for them, figure out what the SLO will be, or SLA. There's a difference. SLO, service level objective, right? SLA, that usually has contractual penalties, right? So we just worked out how is it going to be delivered? How is it going to be consumed? How do you wish to administrate it?
yep.
Again, concept's the same. In this case, it's DR, right? So the other one's backup. This one's the DR. Conceptually the same, right? Because, Cohesity could be a DR platform. If I want to DR and restore in a different location, you can do that, right? Again, it's a business conversation. So we look at how do we leverage the technology to deliver the business outcome. And in this case, we actually leverage both technologies to deliver. It's not that I use Zerto for everything or Cohesity for everything. I'll back it up with Cohesity and I'll bolt Zerto to that percentage of the environment that requires that RPO.
Perfect. And the more time I spend in IT, that's certainly something that I see is that we stop talking about technology quite so much, and we start talking about what can it deliver for the business. And that's really the key point here. I mean, look, when customers buy us, this is kind of a different way of looking at it, but when customers buy Cohesity on HPE, what are they buying? What key use cases? Really, it's 3. Backup target, meaning, hey, you're a VM Commvault, Veritas,
That backup,
exactly, networker. You're using some other backup software today. You paid for licensing on that for some number of years, and you want to write those backups out to something that can be Cohesity on HPE. Absolutely, a lot of customers get their feet wet there. But if you want to do all that cool ransomware detection stuff and anomaly detection that we're talking about here, then you buy us for converged data protection, which means, hey, we are both the backup application and the backup target. There's no extra infrastructure. It's just a license you're turning on those same servers you're buying. And then Cohesity, in order to be a robust data protection target, we had to build really, really strong file and object storage services. So we can do that too. Are we going to be the fastest NAS you've ever touched? No. Are we going to be competing with the likes of HPE's recent announcement with Vast Data? No, absolutely not. right? We're not going to be playing in that ballpark. But hey, you have a handful of Windows file servers that you're ready to get rid of, or an old NetApp or Isilon or EMC VNX or Solera. We can absolutely play in that arena as well. And again, reducing down your attack surface, reducing down the number of points of administration to simplify your life day to day.
Chris, I'll point out the fact that when we talked about that big tanker earlier, GreenLake, right? We talked about that umbrella of GreenLake consumption, GreenLake managed service. If you think about what Chris Klosterman just talked about there, guys, at the end of the day, it's being able to consume it as a service and be able to literally apply that service to your business. So at the end of the day, the responsibility of architecting the kit, architecting the hardware, architecting the actual network for all this to actually work, it becomes a workshop, and that risk is put on HPE because you provided me the business term, you've provided me the scope, the deliverables out of that scope. We simply assess the situation, what the actual environment consists of, and then we, HPE and Cohesity, must be able to stand up a solution, a service that delivers a premium value and the outcome, the deliverables of the contract. Now, what is the actual plumbing of it? We'll show you what the plumbing is, but more importantly, the risk is on us to ensure that plumbing, that kit delivers that service. And of course, then it's wrapped in a GreenLake consumption, and you only pay for what you use of that ecosystem. So, just want to throw it out there for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess from a next step standpoint, let's talk to 3 different customer stories, and I just want to show you something that's real and something that you may experience, or maybe you already have experienced. I'm sure some of the people on this line have gone through ransomware events. So this first one is a customer story. This is before they became a Cohesity customer. So there was a phishing attack. Somebody's admin credentials were obtained. The attacker searched around the network, identified targets. The day of the event, over 500 Windows servers were encrypted. The backup data, the replicas, and the archives were all deleted. Okay, sound pretty real? It was for them. Okay, employees immediately lost access to email, files, applications. The business was effectively shut down. Right, most of us cannot work without technology these days. If email and Slack and things like that are down, we just hold up our hands in the air and wander around confused. And the customer was held for ransom. So, okay, what happens next? Well, they paid. Okay, this is the aftermath that no one talks about, though. They paid. They got the keys. Okay, I said 500 servers. They got 500 keys. Imagine somebody giving you 500 sets of car keys to a parking lot full of cars and telling you to move them all. Good luck with that. Trying to match up a key to a car. Well, it was very much that. But then came something else even more interesting. Nobody tends to think about. How full does everybody on this call run their SAN? Less than 50%? I very much doubt it. Probably 70, 80% full. Well, the customer had to decrypt these servers to somewhere. So they start trying to decrypt them, and their SAN was over 50% full. So they have to start playing a shell game and trying to buy another shelf of another tray of disks to get additional capacity to unencrypt into. So they're playing the shuffle or shell game. They had to do a clean room recovery process, right? You bring all those, servers back up, and now you've got to go through and make sure every one of them is not infected any longer before you allow it back onto your network. And in the end, their employees were told to return to work several days later. Okay, so that's one of those real world things you don't think about. The next one's even, I'm glad that it's real, but it's pretty funny. This happened about 2 months ago. This is a customer of ours in Thailand, joint customer of ours. Unfortunately, we have customer testimonial videos from the head of IT there, which is great, but they're all in Thai, so that's something we've got to work on. But Origin Property is a giant multinational property management and real estate holding company based in Thailand, and they were using one of our competitors for backup. Just so happened that they started doing a POC with Cohesity on HPE. And during that POC, believe it or not, they actually suffered a ransomware attack. Okay. During the POC, their backups from their legacy backup solution were actually deleted during the ransomware attack, but they had all their Cohesity backups. So they were able to recover absolutely everything in under 3 hours on like a Saturday morning. And nobody ever even noticed that they were hit. Which
we would not recommend this.
No. And yeah, exactly. And lucky for them, in the POC, they were actually backing up all of production, right? Most customers in a POC will back up, 10% of production or some little piece, but they backed it all up. So good for them. Perfect. So then I want to talk about the last one. And Chris Tinker, I'll hand this one over to you because you were intimately involved in this one.
Yeah. So this one was an interesting one. A large financial institute came to us with a need of, because of regulatory commitment, back to the compliance, the governance, all the good stuff in the regulatory body of a financial ecosystem. They needed to be able to restore thousands of VMs. We say here hundreds of VMs in 4 hours, but it was over 1,000 they needed to restore. So we're having to look at how do we sign up for SLOs, SLAs to be able to ensure that we can hit that mark. So we came down and understood the volume of data, the velocity of data, the scale of the environment, the variability of the workloads, the change rates per day. All right, we looked at, okay, what are we backing up? Then where are we going to store it? Cohesity. All right, Brent, let's get Cohesity in here. Let's take a look at how we're going to solve this thing. Working with Cohesity, we actually designed a solution that actually is not only delivering, we're now, it's in the petabyte range, I think 10 petabytes, and we're fixing to grow it. We're only at 20% of the environment. This will be huge. So it's already huge when it just started, and it's going to be absolutely ginormous. But I just wanted y'all to see that this is our partnership with Cohesity as HPE Cohesity go not just opportunistic, right? It goes from cradle. We're in our development labs working together to create a differentiated service, right? So we're taking our kit, we're taking their software, collaborating on how best to pencil this together, how to actually architect it together, where our maybe our silicon ready trust can be silicon can be plumbed into their security apparatus and Cohesity. But then how do we manage it? No one wants to do firmware management, driver management, operating system. Nobody wants to do all that. So we're working with them to say, all right, how do we as HPE take the entire Cohesity stack and deliver it as a service to our customer that is plumbed into their API, into their console, so they have a business report and their users are able to be self-empowered, self-enabled. But this right here is a real-world financial institution. It is live and nationwide today. Any questions out there on that one? It's big, guys. I'll leave it at that. Next slide. We'll go ahead and talk about what else is coming up. Demo. This is where Chris and I say, you know what? I just talked about this large financial institution. I've just talked about what you can do in restores. But we talked about, well, wait a minute. Why don't we show the audience just how easy it is? And why, under HPE solution with Cohesity, why did we choose them? Remember, I told you we have 8 solutions we can pick. But why do we pick them for this outcome? Hey, Chris Klossman, let's show them. You're muted, buddy.
That.
There you go. Keep going.
You can hear me all right? Okay, good. All right. So let me just find the share screen button here. Where did it go?
And while he finds that, guys, what you're about to see is this simplicity of essentially a Cohesity, backing up VMs. The VMs get destroyed, and how fast can we restore? Here you go.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we have here, this is a virtual Cohesity environment. If you've never seen the power of one of our unique sales propositions, we call it IMR, Instant Mass Restore. And what I want you to understand here, so yes, these are small VMs, but the way in which we do mass restoration is really unique in the industry. And there are other competitors that can restore 1 VM, 5 VM, something like that quickly, if you use their NFS proxy and things like that, but nothing at this kind of scale. So I have here a folder in vCenter with 30 VMs in it. Usually we do this with 5, but I thought doing 30 would be a little bit more adventurous. Let's have some fun on a webinar. So I'm going to take these 30 VMs. I'm going to go and I'm going to turn them off. Turn them all off right there. Yes, I want to turn them off. Okay. So those are all powered off now. And now I'm going to do something you never do in a demo. I'm just going to delete them from disk, so they're gone. Okay, these are small VMs, but what I want you to understand is the way we do instant mass restore, we're going to take whatever backup you want to restore from, and we're going to create a writable clone of that, NFS exported, attach it to all the ESX hosts in your cluster, register those VMs and power them on, then storage vMotion them back over. So whether it's 2 gigabytes or 2 petabytes, the only thing that takes longer is actually the storage vMotion, but the VMs are up and running the whole time. So if I come in here and I just say data protection, if you've never seen the Cohesity UI before, this is it, by the way. And I'm just going to do a recovery. I want to recover. What do I want to recover? Some virtual machines. And I don't really remember what those VMs were called. So we have wildcard-based searching, by the way. So I'll just call it, they were biz something. Hey, biz app group, this whole group of virtual machines. I last backed it up 2 hours ago. Now I can go in and I can pick, obviously, when I want to recover it from. I can also select where I want to recover it from. So we support, archiving additional copies out to Glacier, to S3 targets, to Azure Cold Storage, whatever you want. But so I'm just going to pick the latest recovery point. We have, several in here, but I'll just take the latest and greatest. Recover options. I'm going to leave everything here alone, except I don't want to add any prefixes or suffixes. Why might you do that? Well, let's say you wanted to take production and restore it and call it stage. You could do that. Now, when a real ransomware event occurs, you might not want those NICs attached when you turn them on. You might want to bring those machines up, wipe and clean room, right? That's what this option is for. So let's disconnect those network cards when we turn these VMs on, and then just hit recover. So what's going to be most interesting here is to come over here and watch inside of vCenter what happens. And here in just a couple of seconds, what you're going to start to see is a NFS data store get created. Okay, these VMs have been registered, so it's doing them in batches. So right now we have about 10 or 15 of them, and it's growing and growing and growing. As soon as they're all registered, it's going to start powering them on, and then you're just waiting for your operating system to boot. So I said 30 VMs. Those 30 VMs are all coming back right now. And here, let me click out of here and back in, and that way it'll actually count how many VMs are in the folder. So summary, yep, all 30 are back. So if we look at these VMs, all 30 are, let's check power status. They are all powered on. So now it's a matter of waiting to storage vMotion them back over. So relocate virtual machine is the action for storage vMotion. That's all happening live. So in the space of 90 seconds, 2 minutes, I've just restored 30 virtual machines. And what's really powerful is to see that. Oh, I was going to say, see that at 100 or 1,000 or 2,000.
To his point, at 1,000, we have to sit down. So Klosterman, his team, Cohesy's team, HPE team come together. Like, here's the actual challenge. How would we architect this? So let's be clear that the kit that I talked about earlier, that's just GreenLake consumption of kit. The idea is now it's a service. We're responsible for delivering the service, in the overhead of managing the kit, managing the hardware, the ecosystem, the architecture. That risk is all on HPE now, so that you don't have to do all that. Our channel partners, same thing. The channels can sell it, and again, we simply take that off their shoulders if they so desire. Of course, if they wish to do it, they can still do that. So it's not a requirement. Just want to make sure everybody is acutely aware of the options. But you just saw the power of why we chose Cohesity, working with Cohesity for the large financials we're dealing with.
Yeah, absolutely. So really, what to ask yourself? And we tried to think about, what are the things, if you want to better be prepared, better position your organization for a ransomware attack, what do you really need to ask yourself? The first is, these are business questions. How much would it cost you to be down for a day, right? If you don't know, talk to your CFO, right? It's not terribly complicated math. It's what's your annual revenue divided by 365. or something like that, and you figure out, okay, how much would it cost you to be down for 1 day? If you could cut that in half, how much would it save you? Okay. And how long would it take you to recover using your current backup solution? Assuming you have whatever the latest and greatest version is from whatever one of our competitors might be out there, how long do you think it would actually take you to recover? If you don't know, it's probably a good time to ask now rather than when an event actually occurs, right? In addition, are your backups today, are they immutable, right? Could somebody come in, like that Origin property case that I talked about, could somebody come in and destroy all their backups? You saw that, we've seen that with a number of customers where the backups just get destroyed. And we can prevent that. We can stop that before it occurs. Chris, what other questions would you suggest that the audience ask?
How modernize the backup? Where's the protection requirements at? Ask your business around what are you doing for secure enclaves, forensics, or maybe air gapping. Simple technologies that say, look, are you still doing the old way of tape? You can, but there's way easier ways, modern ways that provide an air gap with technologies that's immutable. Chris Klosterman just pointed it out. That takes all the human factor out of it. It's searchable. You can find it, and you can restore business without waiting 18 days for a tape. So there's just modern ways of doing this as a service that delivers value, de-risk an enterprise, and it allows you to sleep easier at night.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you think back, years ago we used to back up everything, and then I know I was a NAS guy for a long time. Worked at EMC, was in Isilon corporate, and I saw over the last 10 years or so, a lot of customers gave up on backup of NAS, for instance. Why? Because they got so big, right? Once people get past 100, 150 terabytes, most of them just threw up their hands and gave up on backups. Is that because there's not a business obligation to protect that kind of data? No, not at all. That obligation still exists. It always did. But there's just not the ability to get it done. Well, if you come at it with a modern solution, we can show you how to make that better too. And that's just NAS backup. Obviously, we can talk about protection of a lot of things. How many of you use M365 for your email, right? Nobody's going out and voluntarily deploying new Exchange servers today, unless you're in the DoD, right? Everybody's doing Exchange Online, or they're doing G Suite. If you have 10,000 users in M365, OneDrive, Exchange Online, SharePoint, Teams, do you back any of that stuff up? Right? Does Microsoft back it up for you? Probably not. Do they suggest that we in a shared responsibility model, that you protect that data? Absolutely. So we can help you solve those problems.
In fact, for those that don't know, we do that today. We, as an MSP, we use Cohesity. Again, GMS, managed service provider, managed for you. We use Cohesity to help back that up. So if customers come to us and look, I don't have any manpower for it. I simply want to protect my enterprise. Can you offer a service that backs up this? Sure, we can. We put it into a colo, make it cloud adjacent, and back it up. It's real simple, guys. We've been doing this for years. This is simple things around how do we enable. Well, not only do we do that, we actually enable self-serve. So the user is empowered to do the backup. No logging a ticket to restore something. It's enabling the user themselves to be essentially the controller for their own destiny.
Perfect. So I guess, next, really, if we move forward, the next steps from our side are complete a sizing. Schedule a test flight, right? I mean, you saw me do a demo, but how would you like to get your hands on it, kick the tires, and try something out? Schedule a deep dive or a demo with one of our field teams. Book an enterprise briefing. We'd be happy to meet with customers out at HPE Discover for any of you guys going to Discover out this summer. I'll be there. I'm sure Tinker will be there as well. Sign up for a free trial, right? And I do see we have a number of questions coming in as well, which is great. And I may go through and start answering some of those ones that are in the HPE Cohesity queue live, and we'll just go from there. Anything else, Mr. Tinker, before we do that?
I would encourage everybody to check out HPE Discover. It's in June. It's coming up. Just love to see you there. At the demo, schedule a test flight. If you just you're curious, Get engaged with your HPE sales reps, your Cohesity sales reps, or your just your account teams. They'll help you address the concerns, address your concerns and business concerns around how to protect the enterprise.
Yeah. So Rochelle asked a question. One of our vendors experienced a cybersecurity event that affected our customers. Is there a solution you can offer to protect our company when we were doing all we can against ransomware? So what Rochelle's question here is really a little bit different, right? It's not saying that it's data hosted in their environment. It's saying that, hey, a vendor protected it. I mean, part of that you can do contractually, right? You can say in your contract with your vendors, with your suppliers, that we require for our business operations that you have a robust data protection solution, right? You can make suggestions like that contractually. Talk to your legal teams about things like that. And
it does come down to if that vendor is a CSP. So if you think about if you're buying something from a cloud service provider, then an MSP actually can bolt services to the CSP. What's a good example of that? Office 365. Right? That's a cloud service provider. It's a cloud service. But what if you want to do backup? Well, to Chris Klosterman's point, customers will engage HPE or Cohesity to say, we want you to back that up. As an MSP, we simply attach backup services and put a SLA and RPO to that particular backup, what the business needs. How we do it, again, that's the technology component. Most customers say, at this modern age, they simply want to know, what is my run rate? What is my cost per unit? And what is my SLA, RPO, and RTO? Then you go, HPE,
and it's
do that.
Yeah, and it's have a conversation with your vendors, with your suppliers, and look at that shared responsibility model, right? If you're depending upon them for your business to function, it's important to understand who is responsible for what. I mean, even if we look at M365 as an example, Microsoft has that shared responsibility model where they're responsible for their infrastructure uptime, right? They're responsible for their networking and compute and storage and making sure that the application and software is running. You are responsible for the data integrity. And make sure you know where that line is drawn in the sand. Okay, looking through some others here. Current customer here, definitely interested in data classification. Well, absolutely, I'm glad to hear that. With our latest Data Hawk offering in partnership with Big ID and with Qualysys, we have great data classification and threat identification coming. It'll leverage compute nodes on an HPE cluster, so extra 1U DL360s or eventually DL320s to help you identify and do some really in-depth analysis of your data. Let's see here. Are there any plans to integrate management of HPE and Cohesity under a single pane of glass? Well, management of the platform can all be done through Cohesity Helios. Management of firmware is the only outlier at the moment. We have done some integration work with HPE InfoSight. That is not currently live. So it was, and then it wasn't, and then it was, and then it wasn't. And anyway, it's an on and again, off again thing. We'd love to see something more complete there, I think, from the corporate side as well. Jesse asked, current customer here as well, how does Cohesity ensure the integrity of the backed up data? Well, when we take a backup, we calculate a checksum of every block that we back up. And when somebody reads that block back, we compare it to the checksum and we make sure that it matches before we send it over the wire. We also do periodic background scrubber scans. But also, once a backup is done, that data is never shared out at all, right? Even if you're doing a restore, we're not sharing out your backup data. We're sharing out a clone of your backup data, right? Or a snapshot of it, a photograph of it, to use a different term. So that data is never externally accessible outside the cluster. And with 681 and later, Worm is turned on by default on all new protection policies. So if you're running 681 or later, 681U2 will be marked LTS very soon. You could turn that on yourself in your policies today and lock all the data down with Worm to where it's SEC 17A4 compliant, and you just can't destroy it. So anyway, there are options you can do there. I would suggest having a chat with your account team about what's possible. Can Cohesity be used to back up SaaS applications such as Salesforce? It can. We have native solutions for backing up some things like M365. We have partners that can help us back up some other things. And for specifics, we can definitely dig in with your account team. That's for VMs. What about the hosts themselves and the physical servers? Well, an ESXi server, they're transient, right? And nobody really cares about the ESX servers themselves, the hosts. Now, physical servers, absolutely. We can protect. We have bare metal recovery options. We can protect. We have agents for any number of operating systems, including HPUX, AIX, and we can protect and restore physical servers too. So we can do both. So how does Cohesity use AI-based detection to identify emerging threats and vulnerabilities in data? So emerging threats is always a good question, and because nobody can be at the bleeding edge. And I know some of our competitors, are trying to use Yara rules for detecting ransomware. And if you are one of the 5 people in North America that know how to write a good Yara rule, good for you. There aren't very many. And I liken it back to, if we look at antiviruses in the past, or antivirus software in the past, nobody wrote their own antivirus software as a customer, right? You paid Symantec or Trend or McAfee to do that for you. And then you got frequent virus definition updates. So that's what we've done inside DataHawk with our partnership with Big ID. They supply what those rules should be and dig through the data. And then that way you stay current. And that onus is on them to help you identify it.
It's top of the hour, Chris Leffner, so I just want to be kind to everybody's time.
Perfect.
I want to thank everybody for their attendance today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Chris, really great presentation. And my favorite part was the IMR, the instant mass recovery that you showed in the demo there. That was just so cool to see. I learned a lot on this event, and I know the audience did as well. I'm afraid we've run out of time here for our live Q&A. We got a lot of great questions still to get back to. But Chris Tinker and Chris Klosterman, thank you so much for your great presentation and demo today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you all. And as I understand it, David and team from ATM, you'll be in touch with regards to winners of the Amazon gift card and so forth.
Absolutely. Yeah, let me go ahead and announce the winner now of our Amazon $250 gift card. This one's going to Jen Harmon from Kansas. Congratulations. We'll reach out to you. And we'll also reach out to our best question prize winner as well. And of course, before you go out there in the audience, don't forget about the 4 excellent handouts there in the handouts tab. We've got a really cool ebook for you and 3 solution briefs on today's topic. And of course, thank you to HPE and Cohesity for being on the event. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.